In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at 3 or 4 different ways on how to find the equation of a line. So we're only going to be dealing with straight lines or linear functions. So if you remember from secondary 3, the general form for the equation of a line is this: y equals ax plus b. And when we get our equation of a line, we want to replace the a and the b with numbers. The a and the b represent very specific numbers. Now the a represents the slope, so our slope is equal to a. And the b represents the y-intercept. The y-intercept, just a little reminder over here, the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So it's this point here on this little diagram. And it's the point when x is equal to 0. So it's the y value when x is equal to 0. The x-intercept is the point where the line crosses the x-axis. So it's the x value when y is equal to 0. So it's this point here is the x-intercept. From our equation of a line, we can find the x-intercept. It is negative b divided by a. So if you know the a value, you know the slope. If you know the b value, you know the y-intercept. And if you have the b and the a value, you can find the x-intercept. So let's apply this in our first example. So in example 1, find the equation of the line given here in this diagram and state the x-intercept and state the y-intercept. So first thing you should do is, well, we see it's a straight line, so we're going to write the general equation of the line. So that's y equals ax plus b. Okay, so now we need to replace the a and the b with a number. The a is the slope, the b is the y-intercept. So if we look at our graph, right away we can see what the y-intercept is. The y-intercept is where the function crosses the y-axis. And that's here. It crosses the y-axis at y is negative 3. So I already know my b. My b is negative 3. Okay, now I need to find the slope. Well, we've seen 2 different ways to find the slope. We can use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, or we can count rise over run. When we have a graph, it's a lot easier to just count rise over run. So I'm going to do change in y, that's my rise, over change in x, that's my run. So I start at one point. So I'll pick a point where we can see it exactly on the graph. So like it has to be a corner point. So say this one and, well, let's see, maybe this one. So to get from my starting point, I'm going up and then over. Remember, you have to always follow the same path. And now I'm going to count how many I'm going up. So I'm going up from my negative 3, so I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I went up, so that's positive 8. And then how much do I go over? So I was here, I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going towards the right, that's positive, so that's positive 5. That's my slope. And you should always reduce this fraction. This is already in lowest term, so we leave it at that. And now I can just substitute that into my equation. Y equals 8 over 5x minus 3. So the question asks us to state the y-intercept. Well, we already know the y-intercept is negative 3. That's my b. And let's look at the x-intercept. You can do the calculation that we have here, negative b over a, but you don't need to. Just looking at the graph, we can see that the x-intercept is 2. The graph crosses the x-axis at 2. So we can write our 2 right here. Now looking at example 2, where again we're asked to find the equation of the line, but instead of being given a graph, we're given a table of values. We can find the equation of the line in one of 2 ways. You could decide to plot these points, graph these points, because here is 1 point, x is negative 2, y is 9. So negative 2, 9. And then we have another point below it, it's 0, 6. Okay, and then we have point 2 and 2, 3 as well. We could graph these, but you don't need to. That's an extra step that would just take a little bit longer. We can find the equation, so we'll write their general form, ax plus b. And I have to find my slope to find the a, and I have to find the y-intercept for the b. Well, to find the slope, we can just use our equation for a slope. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I can decide whichever point I want to use. Say I'll make this be my x1. This will be my y1. This will be my x2. This will be my y2. And I'm going to just plug them into the equation. So I have 6 minus 9 divided by 0 minus 2. That gives me negative 3 over negative 2. And we can reduce that to 3 over 2. Okay, so that's my slope. Now I need to find the b. Well, I don't need to do any calculations here. I already know the b, the y-intercept. Remember, the y-intercept is the y value, so it's going to be one of these, when x is 0. So if x is 0 here, then this is my b, my y-intercept. So I know that my b is going to be 6. So I can just put those into my rule. Y equals a, which is 3 over 2, x plus 6. Now in this example, example number 3, we're asked to find the equation of the line whose slope is 1/2 and passes through point P, which is 2, negative 4. So right away, if I want to find the equation of the line, we should write the general form of the equation, ax plus b. Okay, remember I need to replace the a with a number and the b. The a is the slope, and the b is the y-intercept. If I look at the information that's given, what is given in this problem that I could already put into the equation? Well, I know that the slope is 1/2. The slope is my a, so I'm going to put that in right away into my equation. So y equals 1/2 x plus b. Now I need to find my b. In order to find my b, I'm going to have to do some algebra because I'm not provided with the y-intercept in my problem. But I do know a point. I know this point, P. So I'm going to say this is my x and this is my y. And I'm going to sub in these values into my equation. So I'm going to replace x with 2. The x here is going to become a 2. And the y is going to become negative 4. So instead of y, I put negative 4 equals 1/2 times 2 plus b. Now, if you're uncomfortable, now we're going to solve for b. If you're uncomfortable with fractions, you can go ahead and make it a decimal. 0.5 times 2 plus b. And now we solve for b. Isolate b. So you're going to want to start by doing this multiplication. Here, 0.5 times 2. 0.5 times 2 is 1 plus b. And then to get b by itself, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get negative 5 equals b. Okay, now I'm not done because now I need to write what is the equation. So my equation is y equals 1/2 x. That was my slope, and I know the y-intercept is negative 5, so I'm going to do minus 5. Or you could also write it with a decimal. Usually when it's a slope, we leave it as a fraction. But if you wanted to put it as a decimal, that would be acceptable. Now, this last example, a little bit different than the one we just did. Now we're asked to find the equation of a line that goes through or passes through point S and point T. All we're given are 2 points. Actually, this example is probably most similar to example 2, where we were given a table of values. So if we're trying to find the equation of a line, again, we start by writing the rule. Y equals ax plus b. We need to replace the a with the slope and the b with the y-intercept. So you're going to want to start by finding the slope. So my slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Use these 2 points that were given. So I'm going to label this x1, y1, x2, y2. Remember, when we're finding slope, it doesn't matter which one is your x1 and which one is your x2, as long as you're consistent. So I'm going to be doing negative 13 minus negative 6 over 17 minus 10. That gives me negative 7 over 7. When I reduce that, I get negative 1. Okay. Now that I have my slope, I'm going to sub it into my equation. And now the last step is to find the y-intercept. I'm going to let you do this on your own. I'd like you to finish this problem, sub in one of these points, substitute one of these points into the equation, and solve for b, and write your equation. When you come to class tomorrow, I want to see that you've completed all the notes and that you've completed this example and you know what the final equation is.